You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to thericksmithshow.com. If you've missed any portion of the program, you can download the podcast at thericksmithshow.com.
You're listening to WIN, Workers Independent News, a diversified media enterprises production.
For WIN, I'm Joanne Powers. On Monday afternoon, the AFL-CIO revealed an extensive set of formal recommendations for a major renegotiation of the North American Free Trade Agreement. Communication Workers of America President Chris Shelton says the AFL-CIO framework will benefit working people, create jobs, and raise wages throughout North America.
Our trade agreements are designed mostly to protect the ability of companies to move jobs to low-wage countries where workers are totally denied basic rights and earn as little as $1 or $2 per hour. If the NAFTA renegotiation is another secretive, corporate-driven process that provides huge assistance to multinational corporations, but just crumbs to working people, that will not solve any of the problems that American workers face. So we are laying out an agenda today that does solve these problems. Let's get rid of the ban on Buy American policies. Let's get rid of the undemocratic investor-state dispute settlement process that provides special legal rights to companies that offshore jobs. Let's enact policies that actually raise wages and collective bargaining rights in Mexico instead of the empty promises we've seen in the past. Let's do this all in light of day so that American workers can know whether our negotiators are looking out for them or the corporations.
Well, 1,200 nurses at Tufts Medical Center in Boston are back at the bargaining table this week after voting overwhelmingly to reject the hospital's last best and final offer on Thursday. The Massachusetts Nurses Association are continuing to mobilize and prepare for a possible strike. The nurses voted to authorize a one-day strike back in March, and Barbara Tiller, co-chair of the Nurses Bargaining Committee, says the option is still on the table.
We have actually been at the table for well over a year. We're sort of at a breaking point. Our primary goal is really to settle a positive contract that was good for the hospital and good for the nurses that work there. We don't feel that the offer that's on the table right now is enough to help us to build a strong, clinically sound nursing staff. It was an overwhelming no vote. So we feel very confident that we could easily pull the strike notice and go out if that's what we need to do.
Negotiations have stalled over three main issues: understaffing, wages, and benefits.
Being a teaching hospital in the city, we are in competition with many hospitals as far as trying to hire and retain nurses. So over the years, our salaries have started to decrease, and we're finding ourselves in a much lower place. We're about $7 behind all the other hospitals. We also carry heavier patient assignments than other hospitals. Our nurses can actually go anywhere and have better staffing, better resources, and better wages. So it's hard to hold on to them with that kind of a climate.
You've been listening to WIN, Workers Independent News. For more information, visit laborradio.org.
It's time for the Rick Smith Show.
I want you to get up now. I want all of you to get up out of your chairs. I want you to get up right now and go to the window, open it, and stick your head out and yell, "I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore!"
I don't want to abolish government. I simply want to reduce it to the size where I could drag it into the bathroom and drown it in the bathtub.
You bet I cut the taxes at the top.
How dare you? How dare you? Go ahead, make my day.
The Rick Smith Show starts now.
Welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for tuning in today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. It's Tuesday, Super Tuesday. Yes, another Senate hearing. More fun, more intrigue, more questions about the Trump administration's ties with Russia. Yes, there is more of it. And look, Jefferson Beauregard Sessions III will be taking the hot seat. What will the questions be? What will they do? Will they give him, the senatorial courtesy that they have in the past? Or will they ask him very serious, pointed questions, of which I have many? First and foremost, are there any recordings? Look, Trump tweeted out, he better hope there are no recordings, which tells me there are recordings. Are there recordings? Where are the recordings? And can we have the recordings? Was Comey recorded? Were you recorded? Were other officials recorded? We want to know. Also, want to know, did he lie about his meetings with Russian officials? And are there any other ones? Should we know of maybe a series of other ones? Here's your last chance, Jefferson Beauregard Sessions III, before you become inmate number 64753. Now is the time to tell the truth. The whole truth, nothing but the truth. So help you God. Yeah. Also, did you have any role in the firings of James Comey? Were you consulted? Did you have an opinion? Did you have a thought? Did Trump ask you? I think that's important. Also, was the Russian investigation part of the firing? Did the Donald tell you, you know what, like he told the interviewer, he was going to do it anyway? Did you have any knowledge of the firing, considering it was your underling who wrote the memo? Just kind of a thought. And, also, speaking of memos, where are the Comey memos? Can we have them? When do we get the Comey memos? Because as James Comey said, they shouldn't be classified. They're his. Just because he started them on an FBI secured laptop does not automatically make them classified material. And a personal question that I have, why in the hell did you leave Comey alone with Trump to begin with? Why would you do that to your president? Why would you allow him to be in a situation where a he said is now gripping our debate? What kind of a moron are you? Honestly, I mean, at some point you got to go, I got to protect my guy. Just kind of a thought. Also, Priebus, where were you? Let's get Rience on the stand, although he might be out of a job really soon. Because if the rumors are true, if everything isn't fixed up and tidy by July 4th, he's going to have to find a new gig over the summer. So the fun will begin today. And as is now protocol, as is now SOP, as is now standard operating procedure on any big day, the Donald, tries to steal the news cycle. Today, no different. Woke up at 6:35 a.m. to complain about the Ninth Circuit again shooting down his Muslim ban. Says, it's a dangerous time in our history, all that nonsense. And then SC, and I assume that's Supreme Court. His Supreme Court may overturn it. And then you got to wonder, what conversations did he have with Neil Gorsuch before he was appointed? Again, goes back to this president has already done enough damage to this country for at least the next generation, just with that decision. Also, 6:44 a.m. wasn't enough to go after the Ninth Circuit. He goes after the news media, saying, quote, the fake news media has never been so wrong or so dirty. Purposely incorrect stories and phony sources to meet their agenda of hate. Sad exclamation point. No mention of what that is. Maybe it could have been all of the reporting yesterday that he was considering firing Robert Mueller, which the source was his buddy over at Newsmax. So to me, not surprising. Trying to steal the day. Also, tweeted out at 8:48, couldn't help himself again. Fake news is at an all-time high. Where is their apology for me for all the incorrect stories? Question mark, question mark, question mark. I guess the thumbs were moving. And again, no direction on what the hell he's talking about. Again, to me, just to steal the cycle. And as I said yesterday, when the news came out of him, considering firing Mueller, I'm going, that's smoke as well. It's all smoke to get us away from what's really going on. This hearing is important. Now, yesterday had a guest on the program that questioned the Russia focus, and Charles decided he was going to send an email. And thank you, Charles. Always appreciate hearing someone from the center of the political spectrum. He said, listening to your guest yesterday got me thinking that you've been spending a lot of time on Trump and Russia when there are so many other things going on. You say to keep an eye on all of the things happening behind closed doors, but your focus has been Russia. There is nothing there but whiny Democrats who lost an election. They've actually lost many elections. I listen to you because you're independent of the Democratic machine, but the obsession with Russia is a turnoff. Charles. Thank you, Charles. I appreciate the email. Here's the thing. To me, Russia's important for a simple reason. There's so much smoke, so many fingers pointing that they have meddled in our elections. Out of all of the things that you could point to that makes this country exceptional, out of all of the things that makes us great, is the fact that we have open and free elections sort of now still. There are a lot of forces, the Republicans, the Russians, all attempting to take that away, to soil the sanctity of the ballot box, to somehow destroy our faith in that box. And now look, just this morning, Bloomberg News wrote a report on Russia. They write, Russia's cyber attack on the U.S. electoral system before Donald Trump's election was far more widespread than has been publicly revealed, including incursions into voter databases and software systems in almost twice as many states as previously reported. They point out that in Illinois, investigators found evidence that cyber intruders tried to delete or alter voter data. They point out that hackers accessed software designed to be used by poll workers on Election Day. They also point out that Russian hackers hit systems in 39 states. Now, we were told it was 5. It was just a handful, and that the software was so great it stopped it, which at the time I said was a giant steaming pile of BS. In fact, Bloomberg reports that it was at such a concerning level to the Obama administration that Obama reached out via the red phone and said that this was one of those things that could escalate us into conflict. If you want to know why I think this is so important, because look, 2016 is over. I'm worried about 2018, 2020, 2022, 2024. I'm worried about the future. Look, I've already had major problems. Really, I've already had massive problems with electronic voting. And have from the beginning, the idea that I'm going to put my vote into who knows where and hope that it's recorded somewhere is just ridiculous to me. And we've been sold these voting machines. And you go back to the Bush years where you had Willie O'Dell, the head guy of one of the voting companies, saying, you know what, we're gonna win the election for George W. Bush. So many questions around the sanctity of that ballot box, which isn't a ballot box. It's cyberspace. It's who knows. And I was told repeatedly, Rick, you're ridiculous. There's no way that you could hack into a voting machine. 39 states. 39 states. And you look at the latest release by The Intercept and this woman in Georgia who, good on her. We need to help defend her and make sure she doesn't spend the rest of eternity in prison. But we now see that the NSA had documents that showed just how deep this goes. And it shows, look, imagine what we see, what we know, what's in front of us, it's already reported. And then think about what we don't know and how just obscene this is. And you think about the hodgepodge nature of our voting system. In Pennsylvania, we've got 67 different ways of voting because you've got 67 different county voter officials. All different machines, all different counting, all different tabulators, scans, black boxes, opticals, you name it, we've got it. no clear direction. And as Comey pointed out during his testimony, if you think Moscow's done, they're coming after us, and they will be back, and not in the Arnold will be back. I mean, it's scary, scary, scary stuff. Now, you look at this op-ed written by a former FBI counterintelligence agent. She's also now an associate dean at the Yale Law School. Her name's Asha Rangappa. She asks a very simple question. Is the president breaking his oath to protect and defend the country from foreign attacks? Because we know. Now, understand, Comey went to the president and said, this is what we know. And he did nothing but fire the messenger, kill the messenger. She writes, what I saw in the Comey investigation, or the Comey hearing, was the most explosive. What I saw as the most explosive aspect of the testimony didn't involve any legal violation of U.S. code or questions about whether Comey had broken established Democratic or Department of Justice protocols. Instead, it was the prima facie evidence that Comey presented that Trump appears unwilling to uphold his oath to preserve, protect, and defend the country, which puts the security of our nation and its democracy at stake. Scary, scary stuff. And you wonder why? Right there. Right there. The sanctity of our ballot box. The future of self-rule. The future of a nation of, for, and by we the people. That should, Democrat, Republican, Independent, crazy white supremacist, green, I don't care. This should worry you and should anger you to action. It is, to me, just that simple. So, Charles, if you need to know why I focus on this a little bit, this is the foundation of our nation. If you crumble this, the bedrock of our democracy, if you crumble the sanctity of the ballot box, it's all over. Nothing else matters. That simple. Thanks for the email. Appreciate it. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Rick at thericksmithshow.com. Quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
All of my life I have searched for clarity. I have wrestled with two paths buried deep inside of me. I lost some rounds, been knocked around, felt my share of defeat. Yet somehow I've always managed to get back on my feet.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1914. That was the day that the Miners' Union Day Parade was scheduled in Butte, Montana. In spite of the festivities, trouble was brewing down in the copper mines. Many of the miners were growing increasingly aggravated with the Butte Miners Union Local 1, part of the Western Federation of Miners. Local 1 had been established in 1893, but some thought the union was too closely affiliated with the mine owners. Wages had been stagnant for more than 3 decades, despite the fact that the price of copper had more than doubled during that time. Mine owners stirred the pot even more by hiring Pinkerton detectives to infiltrate the union, instructed to promote violence. The day before the parade, 1,200 miners refused to show their union cards at the Speculator Mine. This meant that they were turned away from work. The next day, the miners' parade was met with jeers and taunts. Some of the protesters chased the union officials, who were riding in the parade on horseback. The angry crowd swelled and decided to attack the union headquarters. They ripped apart the union offices and tore out the union safe. They took the safe to a field and blew off the door with dynamite, finding $1,350 inside. Alderman Frank Curran tried to disperse the crowd, but they tossed him out of the second-story window of the union's office. Fortunately, he landed in a pile of carpeting that had been ripped out by the angry mob. He escaped with a broken arm and dislocated ankle. 10 days later, an unknown assailant blew up the miners' union hall. Citing the violence they had encouraged as an excuse, the mining company declared it would no longer recognize the union. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com.
Chances are, when you took a shower this morning, an AFSCME member made sure that water was clean. When you drove to work, an AFSCME member maintained the road. When you rode an elevator, an AFSCME member inspected it. I'm David Philman, Executive Director of AFSCME Council 13, the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees. AFSCME members enforce regulations, keep prisoners behind bars, take care of patients, protect the environment, and more. The work isn't glamorous, the salaries aren't high, but AFSCME members serve the public in every aspect of our daily lives. Chances are, you'll never see that AFSCME member working in a sewage plant, diving underwater to repair a bridge, or answering a 911 call. But aren't you glad they do? For more information, visit AFSCME13.org. We are AFSCME. We make Pennsylvania happen!
Disorder in the house. There's a flaw in the system. And the fly in the ointment's gonna bring the whole thing down.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Check out the website, thericksmithshow.com. Questions, comments, something on your mind, you can email me, Rick, at thericksmithshow.com. 39 states. You know, you stop and you think about just, we were told just a handful of states where, there was some mild intrusion into their system, some mild, hacking going on. And I'm going, really mild hacking? There was, it was like 4 or 5 states. Illinois was the heart of it. Now we're finding out 39. We're finding out that President Obama actually used the bat phone to reach out to the Russians. Really? I'm telling you, this is why this stuff is so important. And here to talk a little bit about what we know, where it's going, also a little bit about the Sessions hearing going on. I've asked Jared Geldner to come talk with us. He's a communications and strategist guy with the Democratic Coalition. Jared, thanks for taking time for us.
Hey, thanks for having me, Rick.
So, you look at this and I get people going, Rick, there's nothing there. Donald keeps saying there's nothing there. The RNC, nothing there. Why is there something there?
Well, I think there's something there because new information keeps coming to light that makes this look worse and worse. Look, we don't know if there's going to be a smoking gun, right? There may not be an email from Donald Trump to Vladimir Putin that says, "Dear Vlad, please hack the election, XO Donald Trump." But the bottom line is there's enough here to investigate. The American public needs to know. And it seems like this administration is doing everything they can to cover it up, which, if you remember, is what took down Nixon, not the break-in.
Yeah, any thoughts on the yesterday news cycle grabber that there was a thought of firing Mueller?
God, that would be so stupid, wouldn't it? I think, look.
Well, come on, we're talking about the Trump administration, Jared.
Yeah. Look, Rick, I think Bob Mueller's a very well-respected investigator. He's very serious. Everything we know is that they're taking this very seriously and doing everything that we, both as Democrats and as citizens of the United States who care about the integrity of our system, would want them to do. Trump certainly has the right to fire him, which is sort of his defense for firing Comey, which is that the president has the right to do that. But that would be really stupid.
Yeah, and to me, I said yesterday, this is just smoke to try and steal the news cycle and take away any real conversation about what's important today, which is Jefferson Beauregard Sessions III doing a little testimony and some of the questions that I have. And, simply, what did you know? When did you know it? And why'd you lie?
Yeah. I think, look, the Sessions hearing is really interesting. It seems, based on all the information we're hearing, that Sessions is going to effectively say that Comey lied in that closed session about his meeting with Kislyak at the Mayflower Hotel back before the election. We believe that meeting happened. We have good information that meeting happened. Apparently, the FBI has good information that meeting happened. So, let's be on the lookout for Sessions to effectively perjure himself yet again. So
again, this just keeps getting deeper and deeper because again, as you pointed out, it starts off something small and then you keep lying and you keep making stuff up to try and defend it. I mean, if you had the meetings, come out and say, yeah, we had the meetings. It was about whatever. Use the line that the Department of Justice said. You didn't have to disclose it because it was senatorial. Make something up, but don't lie about it.
Look, that hasn't been their MO from the beginning. That wasn't their MO during the campaign, and frankly, that wasn't Donald Trump's MO in business. Right? He's made a career of lying and of using the legal system to parse words to mean different things than they mean to normal people, and to bully folks into doing what he wants and profiting off of it. And it seems, unfortunately, that that's what he's doing in the White House.
Yeah, there was an op-ed this morning that I was taking a look at by Asha Rangappa, who's a former FBI counterintelligence agent and dean at Yale Law School, and she pointed out something that honestly I didn't really think of until she pointed it out. Is you had Comey going to the president with all of this information, and the president did nothing to protect, defend, and preserve the nation. He basically just fired the guy. I mean, it's really troubling.
Yeah, look, I think I haven't read that op-ed, but I'll pull it up as soon as we're done here. But I think that's an interesting point, which is to say that, Donald Trump and frankly this entire administration have made it clear that their allegiance is to the 1%. It's to cutting taxes. It's to hurting the poor and hurting immigrants and hurting minorities and not and helping themselves profit and not to the Constitution of the United States or the people of the United States. It's pretty upsetting.
Yeah, I mean, because I get this a lot, Jared. I just had an email here
I
talked about a minute ago. The other stuff that's going on, and we know all the ugliness is coming. We know the Trump care is coming. We know the massive tax cuts are coming. We know that the attacks on workers' rights are coming. We know all of this ugliness is being worked on, but we're focused on Russia. And as I said at the beginning, this is the foundation. These are the building blocks of the entire country. Without integrity in our ballot box, almost nothing else matters.
Yeah, but you know what, Rick? You bring up a good point, which is that while we're all up in arms about Russia and we're all glued to this Sessions hearing, the Senate's going to pass a bill that strips health care from 23 million people. Well, we don't know how many million people, right? The House version would strip health care from 23 million people. The Senate version, they're not going to share with us before they pass it. So they are at the same time creating outrage and using that outrage to distract us from things that we really should be outraged about. It's sort of the playbook that they accused Bill Clinton of using in the 90s, which is to say lean into scandal to distract from policy. I don't think the Clinton administration did that, but I think that's what the Trump administration's doing. To the extent that we're not paying attention, they're just going to keep hurting the American people.
So do you think all of this is part of the shiny thing to keep us distracted from all of this?
I think that sort of assumes, Rick, a level of sophistication that I don't think anyone in this administration really has.
That was my response.
Yeah. I think if that were their strategy, it wouldn't be a bad one, but I don't think any of this is all that well thought out. I think it's, they're reflexively angry about this Russia stuff. And they want to get this done. And if it's sort of the stars align, they're fine with it. I think, like I said before, I don't think that you have to assume that Donald Trump was, himself colluding with the Russians, or frankly that anyone in the Trump campaign was colluding with the Russians to hack our elections, to assume that something bad happened. I think, none of these people have any experience in how Washington works. It's totally, totally plausible that they just got duped, but now they're covering it up, and that's a problem.
That is the problem, and because the hack, the quote unquote hacking, we're supposed to believe only happened to Democrats,
right?
And
right.
if you know anything about go back to the 1980s movies of the KGB, getting information for everybody and manipulating everybody. It just makes no sense that you would only go after one person when you could easily get all of them.
Of course, and look, I think. We've been working, as you know, Rick, to expose the connections with Russia and any collusion that took place, and we're just airing out everything we can find on the connections between folks in the Trump camp, the Trump world, and the Russians. But I think, you go back and look at during the campaign, it's not the case that Vladimir Putin had to love Donald Trump to do what he did, right?
No.
To push for Trump to get elected. Right? I think if you're Putin and you look at America, what you value more than anything else is instability. And it was pretty clear, as far back as 2015, that Donald Trump as president would create far more instability than literally anyone else. So, did he help him in the general election, but did he help him in the primary? And we haven't really unpacked that. And I think, this is all stuff that we have to look into. This is stuff that I'm pretty confident that Mueller, assuming he doesn't get fired, will look into. But we need to keep the pressure on.
Yeah. No, I mean, this is And I've said this myself. I don't think there's going to be any emails or hand holding pictures or any of that. And you're right. I think the people who were doing it were almost duped into it. But here's the thing: I was at both conventions over the summer, and the open secret was all of the ties that the campaign had with Russia. The open secret was Manafort and the Russians. And at the Republican convention in Cleveland, they were joking about it, which I found to be very odd.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's interesting that BuzzFeed got so much crap for publishing that Steele dossier on Trump, on the intelligence, the compromat that Russia had on him. I mean, we had that before the convention, right? That thing was published in May of 2016. Not published publicly, but sort of circulated around Washington and around the policy types. A lot of that's borne out to be true. I don't know about the stuff with the hookers, but
but haven't we heard that? I mean, since the golden showers part of it isn't true, nothing else in it can be true either.
Yeah, but that's sort of a ridiculous argument, right? That's never been the case with anything in the world, right? And a lot of the stuff that's in there has been confirmed. We want to know what happened with that 19% of Rosneft, the Russian state oil company that it said would be transferred and then was transferred. We don't know where it went. It went to a Cayman Islands bank account, to a shell company in the Cayman Islands, and we can't trace it beyond there. But we're working on it, and I know that the special counsel's office is working on it, and I hope that the Senate's working on it. And we're going to keep the pressure on, and I hope they do too.
Is that something that the tax returns could square up, or do you think this is just such a deep deal that not even that's going to show anything?
I don't think that's going to be in his tax returns. I think there are a couple pieces of information that we'll find in his tax returns if we ever get them. One, he's probably not as rich as he says he is. Two, there's probably some investments and some debt to foreign nationals that are a bit unsavory, but I don't think you're going to find something to the scale of that Rosneft thing. I mean, I think people that wealthy tend to be pretty good at covering that stuff up, or the IRS would find it and audit them.
Yeah, or their legal team, because I don't think Trump's all that bright. But on the golden shower part, I almost believed the golden shower part just because of Trump's obsession with gold. But it just is. It is what it is. Are you surprised to hear that 39 states that their voting systems were hacked, according to Bloomberg News? Does that scale surprise you?
Yeah, it does. I think, look, the line that we've been fed, both from the Obama administration and the Trump administration, is that Russia tried to. Well, I guess from the Obama administration, that what we've known is that the Russians tried to intervene through public means, right? So by convincing people, not in the way that Obama went to the UK and gave a speech against Brexit, but more online. They used Twitter bots, they used social media bots, they used other sophisticated targeting, that all the stuff with Cambridge Analytica. But I think, to hear that they hacked into election systems in 39 states puts this on a scale that we didn't realize before, and I think, doubly warrants a real independent, open investigation.
Again, which is why I participated, and we did so much around the March for Truth, which is why I think those goals and those aims are so important.
Yeah, look, I think I help run an anti-Trump group, but frankly, I care more about the truth and about the future of this country than I do about I'm making air quotes here, taking down the Trump administration. If it turns out that they really had nothing to do with it and they're going to get serious about preventing it from happening again, then I'll fight them on policy. But I think, I'd rather know that than not know it.
Yeah,
and I think that's critically important for the future of our democracy.
The last question I've got for you, what are you watching? What should people be paying attention to in the one with the Sessions hearing and in the weeks coming ahead?
So I think the biggest thing in the Sessions hearing is how do Republicans treat him? I think, to the extent that the Comey hearing was revelatory and was a big deal and was frankly a bad day for the administration, I thought the biggest takeaway from that was that Republicans just don't really seem to care. They sort of went out of their way to parse language and to try and defend the administration. And I think, I'm looking to see if we can get a chink in that armor. If there's any space between, say, Rubio or, if McCain shows up again, maybe ask the question a little more coherently.
And maybe not watch the Diamondbacks game the night before. I'll give him that. I'll give him that.
But if the Republicans seem to be distancing themselves from Jeff Sessions, who frankly is one of them, right? He's maybe the only member of Trump's inner circle who's a real Washington Republican, then I think the administration's got a lot of trouble. If they continue to defend him, then we're going to make their constituents as aware of that as possible, and we're going to keep fighting. But that's going to be an indication that nothing's going to happen anytime soon. In terms of the week ahead, I think we got to see what happens with the CBO score for Trump Care, as we're calling it, and we've got to keep the pressure on. We've generated about 50,000 through our Facebook and social media and our website and our emails. 50,000 contacts to Congress, to the Senate, telling members to get serious about this bill to protect people who need health care. I think that's going to be a really big fight, and then we've got next week the special election in Georgia. So those are where our attention lies right now, looking for the rest of this month.
All big stuff, and we shouldn't do the "but Hillary" thing, because I keep having people telling me it's the Clintons who are doing all this. It's the deep state Clinton machine.
Look, I was a supporter of Hillary Clinton from way back, even back in 2008. But I think, I haven't talked to her. I haven't talked to Robbie Mook since the campaign ended. I think what's important here is that there's a lot of investigating to do. There are a lot of political fights we have to do. We just have to. There's been a lot of energy on the left. We have to make sure that it stays high and that we keep it focused on winning the things that matter, which are blocking the horrible agenda this administration and this Congress have put forward, and keeping the pressure on to shed light on the Russia investigation.
There you go. Jared, I appreciate the time. Great talking with you.
Rick, thanks so much.
Thanks so much. Jared Geldner, communications and strategist with the Democratic Coalition. You want to check out their website? We'll get a link at thericksmithshow.com of how you can check that out. Quick break. Right back. Stick around and listen to The Rick Smith Show for working people. We're on a road to nowhere. We're on a road to nowhere. We're on a road to nowhere.
Bringing sanity and rational thought back to America. Rick Smith.
This is Solidarity News on Radio Labour.
This is a Radio Labour special report. I'm Mark Belanger. Today is Child Labor Day, a day set aside by the United Nations to remind people that there are still 168 million child laborers in the world. 85 million of those children are engaged in dangerous work. The UN agency focused on matters of work in the world, such as child labor, is the International Labor Organization. It sets minimum standards on work-related matters by creating international treaties called conventions. If a country ratifies the convention, it becomes part of the country's legal infrastructure. To better understand the various forms of child labor, I talked to Patrick Quinn. Mr. Quinn works in the ILO's International Program on the Elimination of Child Labor. I asked him to explain the ILO's role in addressing child labor.
Yeah, well, perhaps a simple explanation is that we have two conventions, international standards on child labor. One is called Convention 138, and this is essentially concerning the minimum age of employment. And this says that countries should seek to establish a minimum age, a normal age of entry to the world of work. And in most countries, this is 15. In some countries, it's a bit higher. And in the case of many developing countries, it's 14. And this also provides some flexibility so that children below this age can begin to do some light work which does not interfere with children's health or welfare or right to education, and is an age-appropriate form of work. But there are some forms of work which are clearly unacceptable, not just for younger children, but for older children as well. And the Convention 182 on the worst forms of child labour specifies a number of illicit activities, dangerous activities for children to be in, including this area of hazardous work. And we leave it for countries at national level, it's for governments, in consultation with workers and employers' organisations, to establish the forms of work or the tasks or occupations which children below the age of 18 should not be doing. So some of the worst forms and the most dangerous forms, children working in mines, dangerous tasks in construction, children exposed to pesticides.
One of the countries where child labor is prevalent is the Philippines. C. Marie Ainsborough reports.
Para po bagang nangangapal po ang aming katawan na nangangaligkig.
There are about 18,000 children working as miners in the Philippines. Many of them are used in underwater mines because they can fit into the narrow boxes that lead through the water to the gold-containing silt at the bottom. On the surface, other children sift through the sediment brought up through the shaft. With their hands, they create an amalgam, a mixture of poisonous mercury and silt, to find gold particles. Carlos Conde is a researcher with Human Rights Watch.
Thousands of children across the Philippines are engaged in small-scale gold mining. This type of work exposes these children to all sorts of danger. Many of them work underground, many of them work underwater, and many of them handle toxic substances. Because much of the gold deposits in the Philippines are below the water table, a unique process that is called compressor mining has evolved. This involves the use of compressors on the surface where a tube is attached, and through this tube, the miners would breathe.
It's not only the children who work underwater who are in danger. As Mr. Conde points out, the children on the surface are being poisoned by the panning that they do.
Besides the obvious risk of accidents, there is a more hidden, secret danger of mining, which is the use of mercury. Mercury is a toxic liquid metal that attracts gold particles and separates it from the sand and other elements, forming an amalgam. When this amalgam is burned using a blowtorch, the mercury evaporates into poisonous gas, leaving behind raw gold. Mercury attacks the central nervous system and can cause lifelong disability, including brain damage and even death. It is particularly harmful to children whose systems are still developing.
6 years old po ako, nag-practice pa ako magpa-berry. Nilalamig
This is C. Marie Ainsborough reporting for Radio Labor.
And that's it. International labor news you can use. I'm Mark Boulanger. Thank you for listening. And remember, it's all about global solidarity.
No, it's not. It's the rich people. Stand united, my mind. It's the rich people. Look, the ones who won, the meritocracy, those who worked hard, they deserve what they get, right? Paul Buchheit, author of Disposable Americans, has a piece over at Alternet that I found rather interesting. He points out that now just 5 men own almost as much wealth as half of the world's population. He points out that last year it was 8. It is now down to 5. He points out an analysis of 2016 data finds that the poorest of 5 deciles of the world population own about $410 billion in total wealth. As of June 8th this year, he points out the 5 richest here in the country own about $400 billion. On average, each man owns about as much wealth as 750 million people. Let that sink in for a second. You know, we've got one family in this country that owns almost half as much wealth as the entire nation. You stop and you think about this, and you think about the messaging that goes along with, and we talked about this yesterday. Why do we allow there to be these just outrageously wealthy people while foregoing education and infrastructure and healthcare and retirement security and you name it? Why is it we have these gazillionaires who pay lower tax rates than the guy driving a truck or swinging a hammer? Explain that to me, because I'm struggling. Why is it the Trump administration wants to do away with the alternative minimum tax while giving massive tax breaks to corporations and the wealthy while stealing health care from some 23 million people? Why do we tolerate that? Explain that, because I'm struggling with it. I know, America's a meritocracy, Rick. You work hard, you play by the rules. The wealthy have earned it. Yet you look at a couple of our really wealthy people, Bill Gates being one of them, and this is one of those things I've been saying for years. Bill Gates stole the technology. He did. He was the guy who was functional enough to take it from the guy who developed it and move it forward. The guy who actually developed the thing that became Microsoft's main technology was a guy named Kildall. And I remember this back in college, going, theft works. And now you've got Gates as everyone wants to be Bill Gates. You got Bezos, who's one of the wealthiest guys now. He made his $50 billion in almost 2 years, cheating states out of tax dollars. That's simple. Zuckerberg stole Facebook, because the guys who had developed the better one, because there was actually a better system called Campus Network. Well, he stole that only because he had the Harvard name, and of course he had better financial support. Now he runs a tax-exempt limited liability company, which gives him the ability to, have all this money without paying taxes. And yet we're a meritocracy. We're a meritocracy. Scary, scary stuff. Gonna take a quick break. Right back with Talk Media News. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show.
Yeah, and I'll go to work at night. I got no time for living, yes, I'm working all the time. It seems to me I could live my life a lot better than I think I am. I guess that's why they call me the working man.
Making the blue blood see red. The Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1926. That was the day union leader Tony Mazzocchi was born. He's remembered as a longtime leader and international official with the Oil, Chemical, and Atomic Workers Union. Mazzocchi was a prime force behind the passage of the Occupational Safety and Health Act of 1970. He was also centrally involved in the grievances Karen Silkwood brought against the Kerr-McGee Company. During the 1990s, he worked tirelessly to establish a Labor Party as an independent political force that could truly represent working people. Mazzocchi was born in Brooklyn, New York, to a union family. After fighting in World War II, he hired on at a cosmetics factory organized by the Gas Workers Union. He quickly emerged as a leader, fought for the rights of women workers, and soon became the president of his local. He would go on to aid in the merging of his union with the Oil Workers International that created OCAW. Within 10 years, he had become the International's Citizenship Legislative Director. Many have noted that Mazzocchi was one of the first labor leaders to build ties with the environmental movement. He linked the hazards in the workplace with hazards in the environment. He showed how workers and the public shared similar concerns about health and safety. He pioneered the Blue-Green Alliance that continues to advocate for green blue-collar jobs, build union reading clubs, and pushed his members toward social justice unionism. Mazzocchi was a coalition builder and worked with allies for clean water and air, single-payer health care, free education, and just trade policies. The United Steelworkers named their Health, Safety, and the Environment Center in his honor. He died in 2002 of pancreatic cancer. He was 76 years old. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
The most important issues of the day. This is the Rick Smith Show.
Back to the Rick Smith Show. Check out the website, thericksmithshow.com. Sad news for me last night. My hometown Cleveland Cavaliers got beaten by the Golden State Warriors in 5 in the NBA championship. The good thing, and good on Golden State, they have said that they're not going to go to the White House. Unanimously as a team decided not going to happen. So there you go. Nothing there. Anyway, let's find out what's going on in Washington and around the world. Michael Olesker, Talk Media News. Michael, thanks for taking time for us.
I had not heard that news about the San Francisco basketball team, and I'm delighted.
Yeah, good on them. Unanimously. I mean, not even one guy goes, "No, I want to go see the Orange Menace."
Apparently, they missed the cabinet meeting yesterday, during which one cabinet member after another offered the most obsequious, fawning praise of our glorious leader this side of North Korea. It looked like a hostage video. Did you see it?
I did, yes.
I mean, one after another saying how honored they were, how it was the blessing of their life to be serving the revered leader, Donald Trump. And then Trump, he compared himself to Franklin Roosevelt, saying that he was one of the most productive presidents in American history. Perhaps FDR came close, and he said that Trump, had led a record-setting pace of accomplishment. The fact is, this administration has not gotten a single piece of major legislation passed, for which we can all be thankful.
Yes.
But the reminder was yesterday when his travel ban got turned down by one more appeals court. It has been a succession of them. I've lost count, at least 3 or 4. And, so he's failed on that, thank goodness. He's failed on health care legislation. He's failed on the budget. He's failed on the Mexican wall. He's claiming that he's gotten all these bills passed. He has. They've all been things like naming post offices.
Well, Michael, that's what's really important. Naming post offices, especially the ones where he can put his name on.
Well, the absurdity of comparing himself to Franklin Roosevelt, this shows you how standards have fallen. What could be more absurd except that maybe the great symbol of international diplomacy has gone from Henry Kissinger to Dennis Rodman.
And I understand Dennis Rodman's back in North Korea, gonna save us from nuclear warfare.
Yes, and let me make it clear that I have very little love for Henry Kissinger, but the thought of Dennis Rodman in any kind of a diplomatic embassy move is just absurd.
So now, was the worm sent there as that was his nickname when he played? It's not derogatory.
I got you.
Was the worm sent there by the president, or is this just a kind of a thing? He goes, you know what? Trump's doing such a poor job. He took it upon himself to save the nation himself.
No, I think that if they get anything good out of it, that Trump will claim credit for it, and if nothing happens, then Trump will say, I didn't know anything about it."
Yeah,
that's. Of course, that's the other news of the day. The thing that everybody's waiting for is the Attorney General Jefferson Beauregard Sessions III going to Capitol Hill today. He's got some explaining to do, like what about any meetings with Russian agents that he somehow failed to mention during his confirmation hearing? What about Donald Trump ordering Sessions out of the room when he talked with the FBI Chief James Comey about the Mike Flynn Russia investigation? What about Comey telling Sessions, "Don't leave me alone with the president"? He will be asked about all these things. He'll be asked about the firing of Comey and whether he had any input on it, because if you remember, he had already recused himself from anything involving the Russia investigation, and we're told that it was the Russia investigation that caused Trump to fire Comey.
Right.
So he will be asked all these things, and he may try to invoke executive privilege. If that's the case, then these guys have got to say to him, "Did the president tell you to invoke executive privilege?" And if he did, then that has the marks of some kind of a cover-up. And if Sessions says, "No, the president did not tell me to invoke it," then on what grounds is he invoking it?
Exactly.
So I think he's in an awkward position one way or the other.
Was it a mistake to do it, in your mind, for him to do it in public?
That's an interesting question. He said that he would, maybe because he was not given so much of a choice.
Okay.
But we'll see. Maybe he feels confident. Look, he's in an awkward position in another matter, and that is the news that came out last night. Donald Trump's longtime friend, Christopher Ruddy, who is the chief executive of Newsmax Media, who left the White House yesterday and went to PBS and told the PBS NewsHour that Trump is considering whether to fire Robert Mueller, the special counsel who's looking into the possible ties between the Trump people and the Russian agents. The White House denies this, but Newt Gingrich came out yesterday after praising Mueller a week or so ago. Suddenly it's this guy's dangerous. They better get rid of him. It's like testing the waters on that. But what happens? What happens if? And maybe they will ask Sessions about this. What happens if Donald Trump goes to Rod Rosenstein or Sessions and says to them, you got to get rid of Mueller? This, of course, is tantamount to Richard Nixon going to his Attorney General, Elliot Richardson, and telling him to fire Archibald Cox,
right,
the special counsel during Watergate.
Yeah.
As much as anything, that said to the nation, Richard Nixon is hiding something.
Do you think, because I got to be honest, I saw that yesterday and I go, this is just smokescreen. This is just smoke to divert attention away from, to steal the news cycle as Trump tries to do all the time. I don't think, I probably shouldn't say this, but I don't think Trump's that dumb.
Well, I think that the danger with Trump doing this is that he is a captive of his impulses. And the fact that it was a good friend of his who left the White House and went on national TV and said that Trump is weighing his options, at the very least, they were testing the waters.
Right. This is your trial balloon.
We're told that there was quite a bit of concern within the White House. I agree with you. I don't think that he would be that dumb, but I think it would be comparable to Nixon's Saturday Night Massacre if he tried it.
Yeah, now the breaking news as of this morning is you got Rod Rosenstein saying that there's no cause for firing Mueller and that it's ultimately Trump's call, but he doesn't see any call for it. So I got to think that if it came to him being forced to fire him, he would probably resign.
Well, let's hope that he would have the integrity to do it, just as not only did Elliot Richardson stand up to Nixon, but so did his top guy, Bill Ruckelshaus. They had the integrity to stand up to the president. Let's hope that either Rosenstein or whoever is asked to do it would have that integrity.
Yeah, I mean, the other question I want to know is, what about the Comey memos? Are those going to be released? I think they should be made public.
We will see what comes out of these hearings, and at the end of everything, there will be a long report. The congressional hearings will probably take less time than Mueller's investigation, which probably go more than a year.
Yeah,
but we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, now you said a moment ago that there's a possibility, and I don't know how likely it is, and I'm sure you don't either, that Sessions will invoke executive privilege. Is that almost like pleading the Fifth?
Well, it certainly would give the public perception of it. They can't force him any more than they could force those intelligence guys a week ago, the four of them, from digging in their heels. He might change in closed session, just as we anticipate that those guys would. But we'll see. But, public perception goes a long way, and Sessions, as a former senator, understands that pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, and I guess the other question is, will the senators, because in the past, senators have given other senators, a little leeway, haven't been as hard on them. Do you think that'll happen? Do you think Democrats will? I know the Republicans probably will, but do you think Democrats will honor that tradition?
I don't think the Democrats will pull their punches at all. I think that they sense that there's blood in the water, and they're going to run this thing as hard as they can.
Yeah.
The Republicans will do otherwise, but I think the Democrats really sense that there is something here and that they want to get to the bottom of it.
I remember talking about, Jefferson Beauregard Sessions III taking this gig going, nothing good of this comes from him. But we'll see what happens. Michael, I appreciate the time.
All right, man. Take care.
Great talking with you, Michael Lesker, Talk Media News. Quick break. Right back. Stick around. Listen to The Rick Smith Show.
Radio of, for, and by we the working people. The Rick Smith Show.
You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to thericksmithshow.com. If you've missed any portion of the program, you can download the podcast at thericksmithshow.com.
You're listening to WIN, Workers Independent News, a diversified media enterprises production.
For WIN, I'm Joanne Powers. On Monday afternoon, the AFL-CIO revealed an extensive set of formal recommendations for a major renegotiation of the North American Free Trade Agreement. Communication Workers of America President Chris Shelton says the AFL-CIO framework will benefit working people, create jobs, and raise wages throughout North America.
Our trade agreements are designed mostly to protect the ability of companies to move jobs to low-wage countries where workers are totally denied basic rights and earn as little as $1 or $2 per hour. If the NAFTA renegotiation is another secretive, corporate-driven process that provides huge assistance to multinational corporations, but just crumbs to working people, that will not solve any of the problems that American workers face. So we are laying out an agenda today that does solve these problems. Let's get rid of the ban on Buy American policies. Let's get rid of the undemocratic investor-state dispute settlement process that provides special legal rights to companies that offshore jobs. Let's enact policies that actually raise wages and collective bargaining rights in Mexico instead of the empty promises we've seen in the past. Let's do this all in light of day so that American workers can know whether our negotiators are looking out for them or the corporations.
Well, 1,200 nurses at Tufts Medical Center in Boston are back at the bargaining table this week after voting overwhelmingly to reject the hospital's last best and final offer on Thursday. The Massachusetts Nurses Association are continuing to mobilize and prepare for a possible strike. The nurses voted to authorize a one-day strike back in March, and Barbara Tiller, co-chair of the Nurses Bargaining Committee, says the option is still on the table.
We have actually been at the table for well over a year. We're sort of at a breaking point. Our primary goal is really to settle a positive contract that was good for the hospital and good for the nurses that work there. We don't feel that the offer that's on the table right now is enough to help us to build a strong, clinically sound nursing staff. It was an overwhelming no vote. So we feel very confident that we could easily pull the strike notice and go out if that's what we need to do.
Negotiations have stalled over three main issues: understaffing, wages, and benefits.
Being a teaching hospital in the city, we are in competition with many hospitals as far as trying to hire and retain nurses. So over the years, our salaries have started to decrease, and we're finding ourselves in a much lower place. We're about $7 behind all the other hospitals. We also carry heavier patient assignments than other hospitals. Our nurses can actually go anywhere and have better staffing, better resources, and better wages. So it's hard to hold on to them with that kind of a climate.
You've been listening to WIN, Workers Independent News. For more information, visit laborradio.org.
Hey, Mr. Tangerine Man, build a wall for me. I'm not that bright and don't know that you're not going to. Hey, Mr. Tangerine Man, keep Muslims away from me. With my jingoistic worldview, I'll come following you.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Interesting news about Megyn Kelly. Evidently, she's been dropped as the host of the Promise Champions Gala. It's an annual event for those the horrible tragedy at Sandy Hook. The idea of promoting gun prevention the idea of, protecting families. And the interview that Megyn Kelly did with Alex Jones has them a little irked. In fact, the co-founder of the organization, Nicole Hockley, said that Sandy Hook Promise cannot support the decision by Megyn or NBC to give any forum or a voice or platform to Alex Jones, and have asked Megyn Kelly to step down as their host. And again, I saw the pictures and all that, and you go, where exactly is this all going as the mainstream media marries up with someone as far out on the fringe as Alex Jones? Very bizarre stuff. Anyway, here to talk about what's going on around the world. And, well, in Washington, D.C., there, as the Sessions hearing begins, I've asked Andrea Chalupa to come talk with us. She is a writer and also the co-organizer of the March for Truth. Andrea, thanks for taking time for us.
Thanks for having me.
So what do you think of this interview series? I mean, there's a lot of this bizarre stuff going on. You've got Megyn Kelly interviewing Alex Jones. You've got Oliver Stone and his series with Vladimir Putin, and then coming out saying, he's a peaceable guy, just wants to talk, good statesman.
Right. I mean, I don't think any U.S. media should be giving a mouthpiece to Putin if he's just going to play them. I mean, you don't go in there and send Megyn Kelly to interview Putin ever. You send an actual journalist.
I mean, it just seems like the world is upside down. I mean, maybe it's just me. Maybe it's just me being, growing up when I did. But all of this talk around Russia, all of this talk of they're more friendly to us than the Democratic. It kind of scares me.
Yeah, no, it the world has turned upside down. Definitely, that's what it feels like. And then you have the report today coming out that the Russian hackers breached far more states' voting systems.
39.
Than we first realized. 39.
That's what I've been saying that all morning. 39. We were told it was like 4, maybe 5. We find out 39. And that Obama used the bat phone.
Yes, the bat phone. My gosh, if only Obama was able to keep the bat phone. So that's very disturbing. And one point that I've seen, people starting to make is maybe the GOP is so gleefully pushing it.
Or not.
Really, pillaging, our government agencies for private corporate profit. Maybe they're behaving in such a manner because they know the Russians have their back. You have this really disturbing coalition between America's far right and the far right that's ruling Putin's government. And if that's the case, then the question that people are raising is if we're ever going to have a free election again.
Yeah. No, I mean, the question is, do the Russians have their back or their backside?
Right. What is going on? What is the arrangement? The point I will forever make is the intelligence report that Obama ordered on his way out revealed that the GOP organizations, GOP leaders were hacked by the Russians, and that information has yet to be weaponized, which could explain some of their behavior. In addition to that, you have the bombshell that from Comey's testimony that the President of the United States dismissed Kushner and Sessions from his office, and those two seem to, give the impression that they knew what was coming next. And the President of the United States then essentially bribed Comey to, go easy on Flynn in exchange for keeping his job. And what happened next was that Comey was then fired. And so this is a president that clearly is comfortable with bribing. And the way Comey described it, that Sessions and Kushner, his son-in-law, knew what was coming. So maybe they're possibly comfortable with bribing. So maybe some of the bizarre behavior we're seeing by Devin Nunes and others is that maybe they've been bribed. Maybe they're getting a piece of some action in exchange for playing along. So, so there's a lot of sort of a feeling of like infiltration and a feeling of that there's a coalition in the U.S. government that's working against our national interests and our national sovereignty in exchange for personal private gain. Yeah,
I mean, for me, you know that Kushner's been bought and paid for because look, he's in the will.
Right.
That's a given. But Sessions, you got to wonder what it is they've got on him, other than the fact the guy gave up a long-time Senate seat to become Attorney General, only to get thrown to the curb within a couple of months. You got to wonder if that doesn't play into this as well.
Absolutely, and the fact that he's leaving out, we're finding out that he met with the Russian ambassador Kislyak, even in more than we even were aware of before when we discovered that he had lied about their meetings. So why is he meeting with this Russian ambassador, which is whatever, fine, okay, members of Congress meet with diplomats from foreign countries all the time, sure, but why is he lying about it? It's always the cover-up that gets that is like it's always the information that people are not sharing that gets them in trouble.
Well, let me ask you this, because I keep hearing this all the time, that members of Congress are always meeting with foreign diplomats. My question is simple: why? Why aren't why is it that our diplomats and their diplomats aren't meeting, and there are official channels for that? Why is it that their people are basically lobbying our representatives?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of reasons to meet. I mean, our universities are collaborating on research, for one example. There's all types of business interests and import, export, whatever. It's not unusual for members of Congress to go to events after work at embassies, receptions and whatnot. It's really good for sort of building bridges. But what's unusual in this case is omitting the information. From Jared Kushner, the son-in-law, to Jeff Sessions, admitting, Jared Kushner admitting from his security clearance form that he met with the Russian ambassador. So the fact that they're trying to hide this information shows that it's the tip of the iceberg, that they must have something greater to hide behind this. So where there's smoke, there's fire. And I'd also like to know, the people who receive waivers from their ethics forms. I'd love to know what should have been on those forms. Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, the most frustrating thing about all this is that it's just like a fire hose of chaos that's coming out of the White House. And in a normal administration, in normal times, just the fact that Jared Kushner, the son-in-law, which is a very nepotistic situation, of course, to begin with, and very troubling to begin with, just the fact that he left off of his security clearance form that he met with the Russian ambassador, that little bit alone would warrant a huge scandal and would be it. That would be the be-all, end-all. But the fact that it's getting sort of pushed aside for this fire hose of chaos that's coming out of this White House, that's what's so frustrating about this whole setup. Yeah, I mean, do you think it's obviously the result of having one-party rule. The fact that the Republicans control all levers of government allows this to happen. I mean, the Democrats are trying, and I give them credit for almost finding a spine, but there's only so far that can go. Right, exactly. It's like we're in a situation now where it's one-party rule, and the party that's in charge is behaving as though, they're above the law for the most part, and that they're going to be in charge for, years to come. They're acting sort of, beyond the bounds of accountability. So there's a lot of very troubling indicators here about sort of how deep the Russian ties go with GOP leaders like Mitch McConnell, Jeff Sessions, Devin Nunes, and others, and sort of what promises were made, what arrangements were made, why is the GOP suddenly, so close with the Kremlin, and given the vulnerability of our election systems, given the latest information coming out on like how widespread the Russian hacking our election systems were. What does that mean about the freedom of our elections moving forward? Do we even have political channels to get rid of these guys and flush them out of the system and elect all new people who can then go in and hold everybody accountable and protect our government from influence by a hostile regime? What people have to understand is this cozy relationship with the ruling party in Congress and the Kremlin, that opens the floodgates for deeper infiltration. So we have to really take a long view here. The resistance may be strong against this, this far right GOP agenda and Trump's chaos train. It may be strong for year 1, year 2, year 3 of his administration, but we have to think long term in terms of really, building up like a very strong, very deep political infrastructure to really hold back the floodgates of Putin's influence and the GOP's far-right influence on really sabotaging our democracy as we know it.
Yeah. I mean, I look at this report that Bloomberg had today about just how deep, and this is just what we know right now. I mean, I'm sure there's more, but just how deep and how many tentacles the hackers got into our system. And it makes me really nervous that, we have this hodgepodge Band-Aid kind of system all over the place without any real cogent direction. And yet it doesn't seem like the White House is all that concerned.
No, absolutely. And what's really dangerous about the hacking of these systems is that, people on the ground level, people on the precinct, county level across these states, if you've told them, watch out for Russian hackers or, any type of, Russian infiltration or anybody suspicious on the ground, et cetera, they're going to look at you as though you're a conspiracy theorist, that you're crazy, and or that, this is all just a Russian spy movie. Like, what, So people across the country who are on the front lines of our election systems, they're not necessarily trained to, look out for these breaches. It's really a new frontier for us as a country. We've always sort of felt protected and from the moat that are our oceans. We were always this isolated country that, unlike Europe, where they're all living on top of each other, and an invasion from any hostile regime could just steamroll over half the continent. No, America always was sort of spoiled with being way over here, so to speak. And now we have to get used to that in the age of cyber warfare, nowhere is safe. They can manipulate, they can infiltrate, they can get you no matter where you are in the world.
Yeah. Do you think, because I can't tell you how many conversations I've had with people who go, the Russians didn't influence my vote, and I'm going, you actually don't know that. But do you think there's a moment, like a moment, an epiphany, a moment of clarity for those people who go, maybe there's something that I don't know? Do you think that's possible?
I think people are waking up to, I believe that Trump regrets is real, and more people are going to wake up to it. But as for the core of his supporters, who are racist, who rely on, far-right propaganda, news network, Fox News for information, et cetera, I think they're just a lost cause, and you shouldn't waste time with them. And you have to really fortify, your coalitions and everybody, stand united and building a really strong wall against this aggressive, inhumane, far-right agenda that's being helped, supported by Putin's far-right government. I think that's where we are. But in terms of this whole election hacking, one thing that really stuck out to me weeks ago was an interview on MSNBC with independent Senator Angus King, where he said, the one thing that's being overlooked in Russiagate is the election hacking. We don't know if they were successful in changing vote tallies or whatever this election, but they may be next time around.
Right. No, I can't tell you. I had a bunch of people email me results from Detroit where they said there are more votes than there are people, and I'm going, well, I don't know that to be the fact, but is there some meddling that could have happened? Shouldn't we get to the bottom of that? Shouldn't we have investigations into all of our voting systems? Because look, it's my view, if you soil the sanctity of the ballot box, if you destroy the foundation of this idea of self-rule, you basically destroy the whole system. Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think one thing that news organizations would be really smart to do, when ProPublica first launched, they had this brilliant journalist, Amanda Mickle. She's now at The Guardian. When Amanda Mickle was, one of the founding staffers of ProPublica, a nonprofit investigative journalism, organization, within 2 years they won a Pulitzer. I believe it was within 2 years. So one of the things that Amanda was charged with doing was essentially crowdsourcing investigations. So she was very, she focused on building online communities to sort of, harness the wisdom of the crowd, so to speak, to pull together information to help reporters with stories. So right now you see a lot of that energy on Twitter, where everybody's become a super sleuth and digging into the vote hacking, for instance. So there's a lot of that energy and appetite out there. And normally, like newsrooms, like the experiment ProPublica did, normally newsrooms would kill for that type of audience engagement and crowdsourcing and that innovative news gathering model of crowdsourcing, et cetera.
Normally they'd love that. Well, I don't see a lot of them, taking advantage of this current zeitgeist of everybody wanting to help and get to the bottom of what's going on and digging in and doing research. That free volunteer crowdsourcing energy, that's out there. And so smart newsrooms should take advantage of that and pull together, crowdsourcing to look into the voting hacks, look into these fishy numbers, see what's real, see what's not.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much here. Last line of questioning I've got for you today: the big hearing with Jefferson Beauregard Session the third. Any thoughts on the breaking news of yesterday that Trump was considering firing Robert Mueller?
I think that was very difficult news for everyone, because if he were to do that, that would be, effectively a purge. What's been happening, the sort of thing that happens in a banana republic or happens in Erdogan's Turkey or Russia. So that would be, just really dark for that to happen. And and it could very well happen because Trump himself is very dark. So I think it's a very precarious situation. And I think, Jeff Sessions, his public testimony, I'm sure they've got some game plan going, and we just have to watch to see what it is. We have to look for what information he's leaving out. And obviously there's going to be a lot of great senators like Kamala Harris and others who are going to know what questions to ask, and just, whether he can answer them or not. But just the fact that they raised the question, that tells us sort of where we should all be looking for the next shoe to drop.
Yeah, this is not going away anytime soon. And I'm sure we'll have you back to continue to inform us, let us know what's going on, keep us up to date.
Thank you so much.
Always great talking with you. Thanks so much, Andrea. If you want to check out the website, we'll get a link to Andrea Chalupa's site at thericksmithshow.com. Just click on her name. Take you right there. Quick break. Right back. Stick around. Listen to The Rick Smith Show.
Muslims away from me. With my jingoistic worldview, I'll come following you.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1914. That was the day that the Miners' Union Day Parade was scheduled in Butte, Montana. In spite of the festivities, trouble was brewing down in the copper mines. Many of the miners were growing increasingly aggravated with the Butte Miners Union Local 1, part of the Western Federation of Miners. Local 1 had been established in 1893, but some thought the union was too closely affiliated with the mine owners. Wages had been stagnant for more than 3 decades, despite the fact that the price of copper had more than doubled during that time. Mine owners stirred the pot even more by hiring Pinkerton detectives to infiltrate the union, instructed to promote violence. The day before the parade, 1,200 miners refused to show their union cards at the Speculator Mine. This meant that they were turned away from work. The next day, the miners' parade was met with jeers and taunts. Some of the protesters chased the union officials, who were riding in the parade on horseback. The angry crowd swelled and decided to attack the union headquarters. They ripped apart the union offices and tore out the union safe. They took the safe to a field and blew off the door with dynamite, finding $1,350 inside. Alderman Frank Curran tried to disperse the crowd, but they tossed him out of the second-story window of the union's office. Fortunately, he landed in a pile of carpeting that had been ripped out by the angry mob. He escaped with a broken arm and dislocated ankle. 10 days later, an unknown assailant blew up the miners' union hall. Citing the violence they had encouraged as an excuse, the mining company declared it would no longer recognize the union. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com.
Okay, this man, I like this guy. From White Plains. Amen. Okay. We have a problem in this country. It's called Muslims. We know our current president is one.
Right.
You know he's not even an American.
We need this
birth
question. This is
certificates,
the
man.
first question.
But anyway, we have training camps growing where they want to kill us.
Mm-hmm.
That's my question. When can we get rid of
We're
it?
going to be looking at a lot of different things. And, you know, a lot of people are saying that, and a lot of people are saying that bad things are happening out there. We're going to be looking at that and plenty of other things. Okay, go ahead. Yes, ma'am.
I'm crazy for feeling so lonely.
Yes, crazy. And look, at the end of it, it's not just Trump that's crazy. It's what he's invoked in society. Look, we've always had people out on the fringe. We've always had the lunatic fringe. This guy's really prompted them to action. And you saw over the weekend, you had the march against Sharia law, where you had a handful of nitwits who were heavily armed, all dressed up like they were going to war, marching in the streets. And you had representatives out there taking pictures and goofing around and smiling and being all happy. And you go, wait a second, this is insanity. And our court system's getting nuts as well. And this is one of those moments where you just kind of, you just shake your head and you go, exactly, what's going on? On Friday, U.S. Magistrate Judge Thomas McGowan III. And it must be something with the third. I don't know. It must be something with that 3 that gets us. But the good judge decided that there was this case that happened. You may remember it. In Florida, you had this roommate who went and killed 2 of his other roommates. Chopped them up and did some really just completely nasty, horrible things. Evidently, the guy had become radicalized. He converted to Islam. But you had you had these 4 people living in one place, and they arrested the guy who lived because guess what? They had tons of bomb making material in the garage. Now, they all admitted to being, at one point they were neo-Nazis. They were in neo-Nazi chat rooms where they threatened to kill people and blow things up. They found guns. They found ammunition. They found white supremacist propaganda. They found all kinds of stuff. They found a framed photograph of Timothy McVeigh on the dresser. And you may remember the name Timothy McVeigh. He's the one who blew up the Murrah building in Oklahoma City. Prosecutors said, you know what? This guy is a danger. We should not have someone with the skills to make bombs, with the desperation of, being in the situation he's in, having this kind of trauma of having, his extremist neo-Nazi turned Islamic terrorist roommate, kill his other 2 roommates. Maybe we should hold this guy because he's been charged with possession of unregistered destructive devices and unlawful storage of explosive material. They released him back into the public. And you start wondering at some point, at what point do we look at crazy and say, stop? At what point do we as society say that this stuff isn't okay? It isn't okay to have these extremist groups among us. It isn't okay to allow them to prance around in public and recruit here. If you're concerned about terrorists abroad, maybe you should stop terrorists at home. And just because they're lily white doesn't make them any less deadly. When McVeigh blew up the Murrah building, didn't care if they were white, black, brown, male, female, didn't care. Killed people because he wanted to bring down government. Terrorist. And yet here we go, another one. Now you could say this is just another story of a man from Florida. And maybe Florida's part of it. And there's part of me that goes, maybe we should give Florida back. You think the French should take it back? I don't think so. But you look at this, and there's a lot of questions here. A lot of questions. A big part of it being, how is society going to protect itself from us? When you've got a guy who's in the White House who promotes this kind of extremist mentality. And look, he may not himself espouse the views, but he allows those people to have a platform. And I look at Alex Jones, another one of these way out wacko extremists. Now on a mainstream platform. That should scare people. What's next? Will the Klan have a Saturday morning show on NBC? Will we be seeing ads running during the Super Bowl? Join the local Klan? Scary times, folks. Scary indeed. Going to take a quick break. When we come back, last week was Infrastructure Week. Trump sort of maybe had a plan. Not sure a lot about what it is. And I don't even think he knows. But we'll talk about that and much more. Quick break. Right back. Stick around.
I'll never bend. I'm with you now until the end.
Thought-provoking, intelligent conversation with a heart. The voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1991. That was the day that a San Francisco man, Jeffrey Collins, received $5.3 million for wrongful termination from Shell Oil. The judge ruled the company had fired Jeffrey because they found out he was gay. Jeffrey had been a second-generation Shell employee. His dad worked for the company for 37 years before retiring. Jeffrey worked for their Triton Biosciences division. He oversaw a team working on developing drugs for cancer, AIDS, and other diseases. For 19 years, he had received positive reviews and 9 promotions. He rose to become the second highest executive for Triton. All of that changed when management found an invitation to a party for gay men that Jeffrey planned to attend. And for that, they fired him. The company claimed they made this decision after reevaluating his performance. They stated that they felt Jeffrey could not be effective as a leader once his team learned of his off-the-job activities. After his firing, Jeffrey could not find a similar job. Despite all of this, he was willing to settle out of court for far less money. But Shell decided to fight the wrongful termination charges. Cases such as the one brought by Jeffrey helped to bring to light the employment discrimination faced by many in the LGBT community. Since his case, California, along with 28 other states and the District of Columbia, have passed laws prohibiting firings based on sexual orientation. 32 states have laws against discrimination based on gender identity. 434 of the Fortune 500 companies have implemented similar policies. Yet, despite these gains, protecting and improving LGBT rights on the job remains an important fight for today's labor movement. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
Doggone it, Donnie Trump missed his opportunity to become a General Patton-style military commander and glorious war hero back in the Vietnam era. He surely would have been the greatest ever in history. But, he says, alas, some unspecified foot problem or something or other kept him from the privilege of actually getting to go fight in that war. Bad luck, I'm sure, but now that the Donald is the by-God commander-in-chief, his inner warrior has been given a second chance to bloom, and this time he's fully enlisted. In recent weeks, President Trump has, 1, escalated a running war of words against Chancellor Angela Merkel of Germany, 2, bombed the European leaders of NATO with explosive charges that they're unworthy of his support, 3, launched a fierce new barrage of tough rhetoric in his extra-legal offensive to ban all travel to the U.S. by anyone from 6 Muslim nations, and 4, opened an entirely new battlefront by attacking the mayor of London with one of his Twitter missiles. In last year's presidential campaign, Trump declared with typical modesty that no one is bigger or better at the military than I am. Well, I'm certainly no expert on war, but if a president is going to pick a mess of foreign fights, wouldn't it be better, strategically speaking, to pick on actual enemies rather than on America's allies? After all, there might come a time when we need friends to stand with us. This is Jim Hightower saying, in a twist of historic irony, it looks like Boss Trump and his military team might need those European allies sooner than they figured. His national security chief and the Pentagon are pushing a new strategy for America's long, horribly messy war in Afghanistan. But it depends on our NATO allies sending some of their troops into the fight. Oops, how awkward.
Hightower's commentaries are brought to you by the Hightower Lowdown, the monthly newsletter with Hightower's take on what Wall Street and Washington are up to. For information, visit hightowerlowdown.org.
Rebuilding America. The Rick Smith Show.
Set up, and this is one of those moments where you go, is it about the getting something done or getting it done right? Is it about, there's an opportunity to build our infrastructure and get something done, but it's going to be in the worst possible way, but at least it's done, or get nothing done, because this is how it's being framed. I look at all of the reporting coming out about Trump's infrastructure plan, and the headlines are reading, Trump hands Democrats $1 trillion moment of truth. And you go, wait a second, it's not actually $1 trillion. It's about $200 billion in tax breaks for big corporations to own our infrastructure. That's what it is. It's a privatization scheme. And, Democrats have been calling for, mass investment in roads and bridges and all of that stuff, for years, as have I. For at least the 12 years I've been on air, I've been saying, look, our roads and bridges are crumbling. Let's do something. And had we done something 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7 years ago, we'd be in a lot better place than we are right now. And what you've got is a situation where the longer this holds, the longer we do nothing, the longer the status quo, the more expensive it gets. It's just common sense. And in fact, if you look at the American Society of Civil Engineers reports over the last several years, you've seen that. I think the last report was about $4.6 trillion by 2020 to get our infrastructure up to like a B minus. We're not talking A's here. We're talking low B's. Functional, solid. Now, Trump's during the campaign was saying $1 trillion. We're going to have $1 trillion. What it is it's a tax scheme. Now, how it's being framed is Democrats have got this moment of truth. Do you swallow the privatization pill? Do you swallow the fact that there are going to be cash boxes on every street corner? Do you swallow the airports are going to be privatized? Do you swallow that we're giving away our assets in the hopes that the Republican schemes will actually do what it's billed to do? And if we've learned anything from history, it's very simply that privatization doesn't work for you and me and we the people. Works really well for the people in on the game. The people who are rigging the scheme works really well. You go to parking, you go to turnpikes, whatever. All of the stuff that's been, prisons, all of the stuff that's been privatized, really profitable. But, subpar on the effectiveness. This is what's being thrown out, again, to us as the alternative. And what they're saying is now what's going to happen is, and this is how the Republicans are going to use this. So get ready for it, because what the Republicans think they've gathered is the white working class, high school educated, building trades person. They think that they've got that now segment of the voting populace, which used to vote Democratic. They think they've got them because they're talking about what their concerns are: jobs, getting back to work, building. And, the hope is that they won't care on how it gets done. The hope is they don't care if it's a privatized scheme. They don't care if it's something that's going to not benefit. They just want jobs. Don't care what it is. That's the calculus. and that if the Democrats do block it, that they're going to be in danger of losing that segment of the voting bloc forever. Because, they won't be forgiven because, look, that segment's been struggling for the last, 10, 15 years because we haven't been building, we haven't been investing, we haven't been doing any of those things as we had in past generations. So it's going to be interesting and to see how the Democrats play this, because what I'm looking at is basically payday lending for infrastructure. We're going to set up this scheme to where we're going to pay forever. We're going to continue to put money in the cash box, or they'll do it through Easy Pass or something where you don't even know what's happening. It'll be a drip and drab to where you don't even know it. Instead of just saying we're going to float a bond, we're going to pay taxes on it, and at the end of it's paid for, it's ours. A bridge is going to last 50 years. You maybe pay it off in 20, you got 30 years of use on it. We don't have to put a cash box on it, but because we paid for it. So you don't have to pay to go across the street. You don't have to pay to go across town. You don't have to pay every time you decide, hey, I'm going to go visit grandma. Conservative worldview is everything you do should be monetized. Every walk across the street, every walk through a park, every walk in a shopping mall, everywhere you go, so you should be reaching into your pocket, giving someone money. That's their worldview. It's that simple. And until we wake up to the reality of this is not the America that we grew up in. I mean, it's certainly not the America I grew up in. I still remember where there were drinking fountains in public parks. You didn't have to buy water everywhere you went. I still remember being able to go to the swimming pool and it didn't cost you an arm and a leg or a liter of blood. I still remember a time where you could go to the parks, the national monuments. Those days are coming to an end in conservative world. The privatization bug has bitten them, and they want the rest of us, to buy into it as well. As we're getting, under the guise that we're getting something done for free. And, you go back to my grandparents' generation. They believe there's no such thing as a free lunch. There's no such thing as a free lunch. There's not. And this infrastructure scheme that they're rolling out to us, which is very bare on actual specifics, it's an ideology more than it's a plan. It's their blind faith belief in Wall Street and the quote-unquote free market more than it's an actual blueprint of how to rebuild the country. And what's scary to me is that the echo chamber that the right wing has built will keep pounding this until Democrats eventually cave. Because, as Dick Cheney said, it's what they do. That's where we come in. That's where we say no. That's where we say, you know what? We want to build our infrastructure. Because understand, and I've said this before, the only projects that are going to get done are those that are going to be the most profitable. Those that are going to, not so much serve the public the best, not so much connect communities or even help business for that matter. It's going to be which is most profitable, which are the cheapest to build and the most profitable to own. And you have to ask yourself, is that what's best for us? I mean, and understand what's most profitable is that we stay, on to everyone owning cars, driving through cash boxes on toll roads, no high-speed rail, no alternative transportations, none of that stuff. Once they privatize the airports, do you think we're going to see any upgrades? No, that's never going to happen. The sad reality is it's only going to be the profitable stuff that gets done. And the stuff that benefits you and me, not so much. Our commutes are going to get longer. Our commutes are going to get more expensive. Our gas prices are going to kill us because we're going to be sitting in traffic longer, and more hours of our lives are going to be tied up trying to get to and from work, or just to pick the kids up from the soccer game. And to them, that's A-OK because that's good for business. And you be damned. And that's what's so frustrating in this, because there is a better way to do this. You go back and you do what Eisenhower did. They set up a private corporation that they funded that did this stuff. And they used, and look, I'm not against the idea of using private corporations. I'm not. I don't want them owning it. I want them building the roads, sure. Not everything should be done by the government. You use government money to hire private contractors to go out and build stuff. We've always done it that way. It's only now that we're saying, here, we'll give you money. You build it and you can own it. And you can run it and you can operate it and you can profit from it. And we'll just, take the beating. How insane is that? I mean, really, how screwed up of a situation is that we've been sold this bill of goods and there are people going, yes, we want this. Bring us more. And again, I renew my call. If you've got something that we've privatized, that you think, Rick, we privatized X, and life is so much better because of it. Ask people in my state of Pennsylvania how they like deregulating the electric industry, how much they love choice of electric rates. I got to be honest, there's no competition going on. There's no choice. There are higher costs and lower wages for the workers and in service that is spotty. So, again, Rick at the ricksmithshow.com. If you've got something you go, you know what, Rick, this is just fantastic. We privatized this, and it was crummy before, and it's great now. I'd love to hear it, and I'd love to debate it, because the reality is I just haven't found it. There are things that we should be doing for ourselves because it's part of the commons. And there are things that the private sector should be doing that I don't want the public sector doing. Making tennis shoes and cars and, whatever. Consumer goods, that's the private sector. But healthcare, paying for healthcare, yeah, I think that should be something that we do for ourselves. Educating our children, that's something that we should be doing for ourselves. Protecting our nation, absolutely. No privatized military, no privatized police force, no privatized fire departments, no privatized owning of our roads and our bridges. And if you want an example of the private sector not getting us what we need, you need not go any further than broadband access. The internet being the future, we are pathetic with the rest of the industrialized world, and we pay more than they do. How stupid are we? That's because we've got this blind faith belief that private for profit, they will bring us the best. Competition bring us the best. I look at the cell phone stuff. And I love the Sprint commercials because at least they're honest. They go, why would you pay more with Verizon when we use the same towers? The dirty little secret is they all use the same. They all use the same stuff. They virtually all use the same stuff. The difference being is how much each of them cheats their workers out of wages and how much their CEOs pay each other and all of that. And how much they're trying to undercut the other one. But overall, we still pay much higher cell phone bills than the people in Europe do, where they have actual competition. You want to add competition to the system? Do what places in Tennessee have done. Have public internet companies that offer Wi-Fi for everyone in the town, paid for with their tax dollars. And it's fantastic from what I'm told. That's what we should be doing more of. Investing in ourselves, investing in our nation, in our communities, and in our own backyard. That, my friends, is the way to go. Going to take a quick break. Right back after this to wrap things up. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
The Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1926. That was the day union leader Tony Mazzocchi was born. He's remembered as a longtime leader and international official with the Oil, Chemical, and Atomic Workers Union. Mazzocchi was a prime force behind the passage of the Occupational Safety and Health Act of 1970. He was also centrally involved in the grievances Karen Silkwood brought against the Kerr-McGee Company. During the 1990s, he worked tirelessly to establish a Labor Party as an independent political force that could truly represent working people. Mizaki was born in Brooklyn, New York, to a union family. After fighting in World War II, he hired on at a cosmetics factory organized by the Gas Workers Union. He quickly emerged as a leader, fought for the rights of women workers, and soon became the president of his local. He would go on to aid in the merging of his union with the Oil Workers International that created OCAW. Within 10 years, he had become the International's Citizenship Legislative Director. Many have noted that Mizaki was one of the first labor leaders to build ties with the environmental movement. He linked the hazards in the workplace with hazards in the environment. He showed how workers and the public shared similar concerns about health and safety. He pioneered the Blue-Green Alliance that continues to advocate for green blue-collar jobs, build union reading clubs, and pushed his members toward social justice unionism. Mizaki was a coalition builder and worked with allies for clean water and air, single-payer health care, free education, and just trade policies. The United Steelworkers named their Health, Safety, and the Environment Center in his honor. He died in 2002 of pancreatic cancer. He was 76 years old. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2.
From United Nations headquarters in New York, this is your World in 2 Minutes. I'm your host, Luke Vargas, for Talk Media News. It's now been 3 days since U.S. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson publicly appealed to America's Gulf allies to ease their blockade on the tiny nation of Qatar.
We call on the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, and Egypt to ease the blockade against Qatar. There are humanitarian consequences to this blockade.
But Tillerson's appeal has been hard to take seriously, given that it was his boss, President Trump, who seemed to take credit for the blockade and who parroted the Saudi line that Qatar is solely to blame for supporting terrorism in the Middle East. And surprise, it does not appear that many nations have heeded Tillerson's message of restraint. Qatar is heavily reliant on imports of food, and the 10-day-long blockade is extracting a heavy toll on the country, leading to empty supermarkets and a run on gasoline. Qatari broadcaster Al Jazeera has also been banned in several countries and has had its web properties repeatedly hacked in recent days. Qatar is not completely alone, though. Turkey, Iran, and Oman have come to the country's aid. Turkey, by sending a garrison of troops to Qatar to, we're told, protect from invasion. Iran, meanwhile, has shipped in 90 tons of fresh food with plans to help out more in the coming days and weeks if needed. And with Qatar's ports blockaded by neighboring Saudi Arabia and the Emirates, the Gulf nation of Oman has stepped in, volunteering to receive, offload, and repackage goods bound for Qatar. The shipping company Maersk has agreed to cooperate with that arrangement, which should allow Qatar to continue to receive at least a portion of the goods intended for its ports. Will that be enough to prevent a meltdown in Qatar that the country's neighbors appear eager to trigger? Stay tuned. For more global news headlines, visit TalkMediaNews.com.
Making the blue blood see red. The Rick Smith Show.
The break, we're looking up all of the places around the country that's they're doing it. They're investing in Wi-Fi. Chattanooga, Tennessee, was the place in Tennessee that's they were one of the first ones to set up a system, as I understand. I could be wrong, but it's my view that Chattanooga was one of the first places to set up internet for their citizens that was free. You didn't have to pay the bill or anything. It was part of your utilities. And it was like 1,000 times faster than what neighboring communities were getting because it was invested in, and we had the people had to say it. And this is why the idea of the commons is so important. When you look at like my cell phone service, which is, it doesn't matter who I get, they're terrible. It doesn't matter which provider I get, it's always terrible because of where I live. No matter where I am, in my house or in my yard or anywhere in my neighborhood, I get 2 bars. There's nothing better than that. And it's just terrible. and I have no recourse. Who am I going to complain to? They'll say, well, don't have a cell phone then. And doing what I do, you absolutely have to be connected, which I hate. I hate the idea of the damn thing tethered to me all the time. But in my business, it is what it is. But it's terrible. And you go and you complain to the company. They're like, well, nothing we can do about it. Go somewhere else. Well, you're all in the same damn system. Where else are you going to go? That's the point. Where else are you going to go? And that comes back to just about everything that the Republicans want to throw at us. This idea of monopoly for everything. Healthcare. We're going to have a healthcare system that eventually is going to be one or two or maybe three insurers. And, you're going to pay and pay and pay, and you're not going to get anything back. We know that's the future. Pay or die is the future. To me, if you want real choice, you have to have a public option. And the community option of broadband internet access should be there. The public option of health care, retirement, you name it, there should be an alternative to what's being rammed down our throats, which is, pay the big corporations and shut up. And like I said, look, the idea of a public option, the idea of we doing it together, all of us, the idea of the commons is that when something isn't right, you complain to somebody, your local elected official. And your local elected official, liking his or her job, do something because you want happy constituents. And happy constituents turn into votes. That's how it was kind of set up. I remember the Schoolhouse Rock things from when I was a kid. You had an idea, you went to your congressman, you said, I got an idea for a bill. And he said, yeah, me too, wrote it down. And the little bill made its way up the stairs and all of that stuff. That's not how it is anymore. How it is today is big money, special interest, write a big check and go, this is what we want. But what about the people? Screw the people. They can take it or leave it. That's where we are today. And I'm hoping that people are becoming aware, and I'm hoping that people are starting to see the point of we have to take back our government. And stop the idea of being divorced from our government. And this has been one of my pet peeves for years. I hear people say, well, the government. No, your government. Our government. Not the government. The government makes it an outside entity of that we have no power over, no control of. It's ours. Take ownership of it. Fix it. Make it right. The idea of destroying it and restraining it and restricting it and just crushing, drowning it in the bathtub, to me is ridiculous. It's playing right into the special interest mindset of, well, we're just going to buy representatives and the people be damned. So, you look at this stuff of the idea of the commons, of we owning stuff, us, that we can then say we want it better. George W. Bush, and I can't find the clip right now, but he said, this was back in the early 2000s, said that, America's 10th in internet, and that's 10 spaces too low. You can ask somebody if you don't get that one a little bit later. We were 10th then. We've gone no higher. Last I saw, we were 18th. And you go, how is that? How is it possible that in the richest nation in the world, at the wealthiest point in history, the people who invented the damn internet, with all of this technology and all of these really smart people, how is it that we're, right now, as my understanding, at best, 18th? Probably fallen below that since the last time I checked, because it was last year. But we're no better than 18th. How is that possible? In the richest country in the world, with the smartest people, with, as Donald Trump says, the most loyal people, the most bestest entrepreneurial people. How is it possible? When you consider that we're being told that everything, the future of our democracy, the future of humanity, is right there on the internet. And that in order to participate in the 21st century, your link to that internet is going to dictate how you do in society. Explain that, because I'm struggling. I'm struggling with the mindset of let the private interests do it. Scary, scary stuff. And that's why, again, we need to be most certainly involved. If you've missed any of today's program, thericksmithshow.com. That's where you go to get the podcast, the Rick Smith Show app on the smartphone. Take the program on the go wherever you're going. As always, you can email me, Rick at thericksmithshow.com. Lots today you don't want to miss. Tomorrow, back on the program, it will be Wednesday. Looking for the reaction from Sessions' hearing. Also going to talk about the budget in my state of Pennsylvania and much more. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you back here tomorrow.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Together, we can make America better. Email Rick at thericksmithshow.com or interact with us anytime at thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
It's coming.